Dalada Samidu Pihitai. We are delighted to welcome you to this special live broadcast of the Day Perahera of the Kandy Esala Perahera 2026. Brought to you by the Media and Special Projects Bureau of the Free Dalada Maligawa Kandy. The Day Perahera ceremony of the Kandy Esala Perahera is held on the 11th day of the festival and is remarked as the final procession to take place as part of the annual Esala Perahera festivities. Much popularly known as the Dahawal Perahera, the special procession has its own special characteristics that differentiate itself from the Kumbal and Randoli Peraheras that we saw over the past 10 nights. On the previous night, after the conclusion of the final Randoli Perahera, one would assume that the Perahera actually concluded just like the nights before. But the final Randoli Perahera has a different conclusion compared to the other dates. In fact, the royal tusker, who assumingly concluded his street perambulations, shall once again step down the moonstone right at the special auspicious time, right after midnight, which surprisingly recognizes a Perahera that will proceed towards the Asgiri Gedige Vihara. This special Perahera, which is known as the Gedige Perahera, is merely a smaller version of the grand Randoli Perahera, which is glamoured with few elephants and dance items, and shall proceed down the Dalanda Vidya, take a turn down the Diesenanayaka Vidya, and head to the Asgiriya Gedige Vihara, which is also known as the Adahana Maluwa Vihara. It is the ancient tradition that the Perahera relic casket will be reverentially kept at the Gedige Vihara on the final night after the final Randoli Perahera, which will be taken out on this day Perahera or the Dahawal Perahera. This temple that belongs to the chapter of Asgiriya under the great Siyamaha Nikaya that governs the Sri Dalada Maligawa is known as Adahana Maluwa, or cremating ground, since it was in fact the royal cremating grounds of the Kandian kingdom. A speciality of this Gedige Perahera is that even the requeries of the Satara Maha Devala, Natha Vishnu Kataragama Pattini, too joins the splendor of this soft procession, which shall parade all the way down to the Gedige Vihara and head back to the respective shrines once the relic casket is handed over to the custodian monks of the Gedige Vihara. A main ritual that is held in this 11th day is the Diya Kapime, or the water cutting ceremony, where the 4 ceremonial elephants of the 4 Devala shrines shall leave the shrines together at the early dawn auspicious time towards the bank of the Mahavali river in Gatambe, that is known as the historic Diya Kapana Thota. The ceremonial elephants shall carry the requeries with the priests on their mount, and once the water cutting ceremony is over, the requeries shall be reverentially brought from Gatambe down to the Katukale Vidya to the historic Pullayar Kovil in Kandy city. The water cutting ceremony is an age-old ritual that marks the end of the Perahera rituals, where the priests of the 4 Devala shrines will slash the current of the flowing river water with a sword, and the first swell of water that emerges from the sword slashing is collected to a pot, which will be carefully kept at the Devala till the next Esala Perahera festival in the next upcoming year. The lining up of the day Perahera is much different to the commencement of the evening Perahera. The 5 ceremonial tuskers and other elephants shall dress up at a designated dressing points of the Sri Dalada Maligawa and the 4 Devalayas and shall proceed out to the starting points. The elephants of the Dalada Maligawa Perahera will head to the Asgiriya Gedige Viharaya, while the 4 Devala representations will reach the Pullayar Kovil in Katukale. The cooling breeze that blows from the surroundings, from the Udavata forest on the right and from the Kandy lake on the left, certainly creates the feel of how nature too contributes to this Esala Perahera by displaying its unmatched unique forms of beauty to this Perahera that shall bless our country in prospering. With the world changing while revolutionizing ancient cultures, traditions and practices, one would wonder if the same diminishing cultures apply to these ancient Kandian traditions too. But certainly not. For Sri Lankans, this is a devotion, and this is the same reason why see the very young to the very old of people taking part in the Perahera to give out their best, and this is truly a good sign for the future of this Esala Perahera tradition. Getting back to the history and the culture of Day Perahera or the Dahaval Perahera, which is commencing at the 11th day on this festivity season. The processions of Natha, Vishnu, Kataragama and Pattini Devalayas shall leave in procession down to the Katukale Vidya, Dalanda Vidya, Kotugodalle Vidya and Kanda Vidya till it meets the junction point of the D.S. Senanayaka Vidya. This is the movement in which the Dalanda Maligawa Perahera shall proceed out from the Gedige Viharaya along the D.S. Senanayaka Vidya and Raja Vidya. And the 4 Devala processions shall follow as usual. The Perahera shall perambulate 3 times around the temple square of the Sri Dalanda Maligawa till it reaches the auspicious time of conclusion, when the royal tusker shall walk up to the Mahavahalkada, and thus concluding the day Perahera. And interestingly, it is still not the end. The Diyavadana Nilame, the 4 Basnayaka Nilames of the 4 Satara Maha Devala shrines and of this Pitisara Devala shrines shall ceremoniously walk to the President's mansion to hand over the scroll to the President himself to acknowledge the end of the year's Perahera festivities. This is a very ceremonious occasion where the President of Sri Lanka shall honor the organizing body of the Perahera and provide state honors to the commended artists who took part in Perahera. While it seems very happy to know that this year's Perahera is truly a successful completion, it is ironically quite a sad moment to almost all participants who took part in the Perahera over the past 11 days. It is a family bonding that everyone shares with each other, and everyone bids goodbye to each other of their colleagues with a heavy heart, with the hope of rejoicing back in the sacred city of Kandy for the next year's Esala Perahera. A unique attribute among all these performers and elephants who are taking part in the Perahera is being prudent in three virtuous qualities: being faithful to the task, being disciplined in what they do, and of course being skilled in practice of what they do. Such virtues accumulate to ignite the devotion of bestowed upon the Perahera. Walking up front with the sound of thundering whips piercing through skies, these are the whip crackers announcing that the procession has commenced. And these whip masters are tasked with clearing the way for the sacred relic casket and the king. When looking back at history in the ancient times, it was the ruling king who would parade the streets in the Perahera. But now it is the Diyavadana Nilame, the lay custodian of the sacred tooth relic of Lord Buddha, who will resemble the king in the modern day Perahera. The Buddhist flag bearers, who are clad in white national costumes, are the most respected flag of Buddhism, while being preceded by the national flag of Sri Lanka. And this, of course, is the Peramune Rala on the majestic elephant Banda. Sri Lanka, the Hevisi troupe that represents the official musical ensemble, who are permanently seconded to the service of Sri Dalada Maligawa. They perform in dignified presence in front of the procession as a tradition which they practice with majestic skill. In fact, the No Panchaturya Vadana, or traditional orchestra of Sinhalese music that produce sounds using their either drums or other musical instruments, is permitted before the Hevisi, as per the rule of the Kandian Perahera tradition. And on the mount of the next majestic elephant is the Gajanayaka Nilame. The Gajanayaka Nilame is the royal official in charge of the king's troop of elephants, and it was a position given to him directly by the king himself. To symbolize this ancient degree, the Gajanayaka Nilame, who is attired in the traditional Sinhala Mul Anduma, majestically approaches on a tusker while holding the Ankus or the Ankusaya, which is the official symbol of the Gajanayaka Nilame. According to the Perahera tradition, the Gajanayaka Nilame obtains the Ankusaya from the Diyavadana Nilame or the Basnayaka Nilame if it's the Devala procession, and after bowing down in respect and obtaining his blessings. De Perahera ceremony of Kandy Esala Perahera is held on the 11th day of this festival and is remarked as the final procession to take place as part of the annual Esala Perahera festival. The royal tusk for the De Perahera of Kandy Esala Perahera in the year 2026 is the tusk Singharaja of the elephant stable of Sri Dalada Maligawa. Singharaja is being accompanied by the tuskers Pulatisi Raja and Mian Raja. On the previous night, after the conclusion of the final Randoli Perahera, one would assume that the Perahera actually concluded just like the nights before. But the final Randoli Perahera has a different conclusion compared to the other dates. We now see the lay custodian of Sri Dalada Maligawa, the 19th Diyavadana Nilame, Honorable Pradeep Nilanga Dala, who walks with the utmost pride and majesty, while bringing in a true sense of ancient royalty to this Perahera. The Diyavadana Nilame shall walk under the Muthukudaya, or the pearl umbrella, surrounded by his army of guards and followed by the Vidane, or the chieftain of the 10 associated villages of Sri Dalada Maligawa. And this is the De Perahera of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya. The Gajanayaka Nilame of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya is on the first elephant of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya procession. The Sri Mahanatha Devalaya in Kandy is located right in front of the Sri Dalada Maligawa, where it is considered as the main shrine that is dedicated towards Lord Natha, and one of the oldest buildings in Kandy that was built even before the Sri Dalada Maligawa. The procession of the Natha Devalaya is the first to follow Dalada Perahera, due to the belief that God Natha is the next in line to attain Buddhahood. The premises of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya in Kandy is recognized since as the Jayabhumiya, or the land with luck, since the time of our ancestors, based on the indication by an ancient Brahmin named Senkanda. And this is the Gajanayaka Nilame of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya. And according to the legend, the Senkanda, this sage Senkanda had once visited this land and had witnessed a hare being chased by a pack of wolves. And with a flick of movement, a hare had managed to chase the entire pack of wolves by itself, just as it entered this land. Interestingly, it was because of this same Brahmin that evolved the name Senkadagala to the city of Kandy. The Devalaya is believed to be built as an offering towards God Natha by the king Vikramabahu III, and the royal buildings, including the palace, had then been built in its surroundings. Devalaya is built in the form of a Gedige Devalaya, which is of Indian architectural style during the Gampala era. There is the main shrine dedicated towards God Natha, and adjoining the main building is the smaller shrine that is dedicated to God Gambar. It is believed that the Dutch armies had used this same space as their resting place when they arrived to meet the king. Another highlight of the Natha Devalaya premises is the historic Ashtapala Bodhi tree that is famed as the Valbodhya, which is muchly worshipped by all devotees who visit the Sri Dalada Maligawa. An amazing fact behind the Sri Mahanatha Devalaya is that it was the sacred site which was used for the naming and crowning of the new kings during the ancient Kandian era. The inheritors of the crown would customarily visit the Vishnu Devalaya first and then arrive at the Sri Mahanatha Devalaya to pick their favored names as the king among the golden nameplates, and then be crowned amidst all worship and respect. And this is the royal tusker who shall be carrying the godly equipments of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya. The royal elephant and the two other elephants who is accompanying the royal elephant shall be welcomed by a troupe of West dancers, or we call it the Kandian dancers. The Day Perahera ceremony of the Kandy Esala Perahera is held on the 11th day of the festival and is remarked as the final procession to take place as part of the annual Esala Perahera festivities, much popularly known as the Dahaval Perahera. This special procession has its own special characteristics that differentiate itself from the Kumbal and Randoli Peraheras that we saw over the past 10 nights. On the previous night, after the conclusion of the final Randoli Perahera, one would assume that the Perahera actually concluded just like the nights before. But the final Randoli Perahera has a different conclusion compared to the other dates. In fact, the royal tusker who assumingly concluded his street perambulations shall once again step down to the moonstone right at the special auspicious time right after midnight, which surprisingly recognizes a Perahera that will proceed towards the Asgiriya Gedigaya Viharaya. And this, in fact, is the Rabana, or the hand turbine is a very popular object used in folk dancing in traditions in Sri Lanka. But this is no such dance even though we see the presence of the tambourine in play. This performance, which involves spinning of the tambourine, which makes it more of a sporting performance than a dance item. And that is why this act is known as Raban Karakavima or Raban Krida in Sinhala. There are many forms of Raban in Sri Lanka. We have the Maharabana or the Bankurabana, which is a large drum that is played by multiple artists at the same time. And then there's the Virindu Rabana that is played while singing comical verses of Virindu. And then there's the Atrabana, which we see now, and that is most prominently seen in dance-related performances. We also hear a version of as Karakavime Rabana or the spinning tambourine, which is in fact the same Atrabana with a dent carved in its middle. The spinning game of Rabana can be identified as a developed performance of the Raban dance. We see several generations of artists who are of different age levels, young and senior, who have developed this intricate skill from childhood by learning to spin various objects. They spin the Raban in their flexible long cane sticks in great balance. And the highlighted episode of this act is when they throw the tambourines towards the sky and surprisingly catch the Raban back on their sticks or from their hand, with no room for failure, of course. Every such succeeded attempt is applauded with cheer from the onlookers as it seems impossible to the common eye. The artists do not forget to infuse several creative twists to the play of this, where some artists create episodes of changing the equipment with their colleagues while the tambourines are flying high in mid-air. And we see some artists spinning multiple tambourines on specially designed stands. All of these wonderful episodes of skills are certainly expressing the talent behind native Sri Lankans to the world that witnesses this great pageant of the Kandian heritage. And perhaps as the rain begins to fall over Kandy today, Many would see it as adding another special touch to this sacred occasion. For generations, the Esala Perahera has been closely connected with the hopes and prayers of the people. Traditionally, the Perahera is associated with prayers for blessing, prosperity, and much needed rain for the land. So, as the rain gently falls upon this historic city, it creates a truly remarkable atmosphere. The lights reflecting on the streets, the sound of the drums blending with the rain, and the procession continuing through Kandy makes this moment even more memorable. For many, rain during such a sacred occasion is seen as a symbol of blessing, a reminder of the close connection between faith, nature, and tradition. And on this day, the heavens themselves seem to be joining this magnificent celebration. Rain or shine, the spirit of the Kandy Esala Perahera continues, carrying forward centuries of faith, devotion, and tradition. The Rabana is at times recognized as a drum of prosperity. Belonging to the Atata classification of traditional music instruments, both the Rabana and the Bummadia, which are drums played only using bare hands, are used in the agricultural entertainment and ritualistic activities in the village setup. And similarly, the Rabana also takes great dominance during the Sinhala and Tamil New Year celebrations, as the Rabana is used to communicate the festive occasions such as the dawn of the New Year, commencing of dealing and consuming of meals, to name a few. Taking place during the day, this procession brings the streets of Kandy to life with the colors, rhythms and traditions of ancient Sri Lanka. The day Perahera also gives devotees and visitors the opportunity to witness the procession in the light of day, allowing us to truly appreciate the intricate costumes, traditional performances and ceremonial details that make this celebration so unique. As the procession makes its way through the historic streets of Kandy, we are reminded that this is much more than a celebration. It is a living tradition carrying centuries of faith, culture, and heritage from one generation to the next. The godly ornaments of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya. The three royal elephants with the godly ornaments of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya is being led in the way by the Kapurala of the Natha Devalaya. Behind the royal elephant of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya is the procession of Basnayaka Nilame of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya. And today the Basnayaka Nilame of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya is being represented by a Basnayaka Nilame of a rural shrine that belongs to Sri Mahanatha Devalaya. And behind the procession of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya is the procession of Sri Mahavishnu Devalaya. The special Perahera which took part last night after the conclusion of the Grand Ramdoli Perahera, which is also known as the Gedige Perahera, is merely a smaller version of the Grand Ramdoli Perahera, which is glamoured with few elephants and dance items, and shall proceed down the Dalada Vidya. The Basnayaka Nilame of Sri Mahanatha Devalaya is being represented by a Basnayaka Nilame of a rural shrine that belongs to Sri Mahanatha Devalaya. It is the ancient tradition that the Perahera relic casket will be reverentially kept at the Gedige Vihara on the final night after the final Ramdoli Perahera, which will be taken out on this day Perahera. This temple that belongs to the chapter of Asgiri Mahavihara under the great Siam Mahanikaya that governs the Sri Dalada Maligawa is known as the Adahana Maluva, or the cremating ground, since it was in fact the royal cremating ground of the Kandian kingdom. And this is the day procession of Sri Mahavishnu Devalaya. The Sri Mahavishnu Devalaya in Kandy, that is also prominently identified as the Mahadevalaya, or the Great Shrine, is the main shrine in the hill capital that is dedicated to Lord Vishnu among the Satara Mahadevala in Kandy. The Devalaya is located northeast to the Sri Dalada Maligawa, which is accessed easily via the Rajavidya and is considered as the most prominent religious site in the Kandy, that is only seconded to the Sri Dalada Maligawa. And the royal elephant of Sri Mahavishnu Devalaya, carrying out the godly ornaments of Sri Mahavishnu Devalaya. It It is the ancient tradition that the Perahera relic casket will be reverentially kept at the Gedige Vihare on the final night after the final Randoli Perahera. A speciality of this Gedige Perahera is that even the release of the Satara Maha Devala, Natha, Vishnu, Kataragama and Pattini too joins the splendor of this soft procession, which shall parade all the way down to the Gedige Vihare and head back to the respective shrines once the relic casket is handed over to the custodian monks of the Gedige Vihare. The main ritual that is held in this 11th day is the Diya Kapim, or the water cutting ceremony, where the 4 ceremonial elephants of the 4 Devala shrines shall leave the shrines together at the early dawn auspicious time towards the bank of the Mahavali river in Gatambe. That is known as the historic Diya Kapana Tota. And this is the arrival of Sri Maha Kataragama Devala procession in the Day Perahera or the Dahaval Perahera, which commences on the 11th day of this Esala Perahera festivities. The godly ornaments of Sri Maha Kataragama Devalaya is being carried out by a majestic elephant belonging to Sri Maha Kataragama Devalaya. The Lord Kataragama, or the God of War, is a divine deity who is worshipped as Skanda Kumara, Kartikeya or Murugan in South Indian tradition, and as Kanda Suridun, Kadira or Kataragamadeyo in Sri Lankan cult. He is considered as one of the most powerful deities who has an appearance of 6 heads and 12 hands, who sits on the peacock with his consorts Tevani Amman and Valli Amman. And followed by the procession of Kataragama Devalaya is the final procession of the Day Perahera, or in any Esala Peraheras. And this is the procession of Sri Maha Pattini Devalaya. Goddess Pattini is famed as the goddess of chastity and is still considered as the most popular deity among Sri Lankans, despite being a goddess of South Indian origin. The virtues of Goddess Pattini are narrated in Tamil epic named Silapadikaram, which was written in the 2nd century, along with several other poetic literature that was written in Sri Lanka during 18th and 19th century. Goddess Pattini is also known as Kannagi Amman in Tamil folklore, where we find many kovils in Sri Lanka that are built by the Sri Lankan Hindus to pay respect to their faith of Goddess Pattini as Kannagi Amman. The cult of Goddess Pattini narrates many amusing stories which are all part of the legend of this great goddess. One of the most interesting out of such legends is her birth story, which is popular as Satpattini, where it reveals 7 different ways in which she had been born, which include the stories of goddess Pattini being born out of a mango, a dewdrop, cobra tear, to name a few. The processions of Natha, Vishnu, Katharagama and Pattini Devalayas shall live in procession down to Katukale Vidya, Dalada Vidya, Kotugodalle Vidya and Kande Vidya till it meets the junction point of the DS Senanayaka Vidya. This is the moment in which the Dalanda Maligawa Perahera shall proceed out from the Gedige Vihara along the DS Senanayaka Vidya, Raja Vidya and the 4 Deval processions shall follow as usual. Interestingly, it is still not the end. The Diyavadana Nilame, the 4 Basnayaka Nilames of the 4 Satara Maha Devala shrines and of this Pitisara Devala shrines shall ceremoniously walk to the President's mansion to hand over the scroll to the President himself to acknowledge the end of the year's Perahera festivities. This is a very ceremonious occasion where the President of Sri Lanka shall honor the organizing body of the Perahera, and that marks the end of the day Perahera. We hope that our country shall be blessed with fertility and rains. For 11 consecutive days, we witness the glamour. May our country prosper. Dalanda Sangudu Pihitai.